They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everybody. I am Lou Ruggieri. That is Jose Ortiz. And this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, whenever, and however you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time to spend it with us. We are going to make it worth your while. And a show and a half, actually, well, 2 shows, depending on how you look at it. A lot coming up. In the second hour, we are moving on our March Madness celebration here on the Benchwarmerz. We are doing a breakfast cereal bracket. We're down to the Sweet 16. We asked for your votes and your input, along with Jose and myself. We're all going to be voting in a 3-way vote for our Sweet 16. And stay tuned. You're going to want to see some of these matchups. They're a lot of fun. The NBA, lots of NBA trade deadline news. Nothing crazy, but enough to talk about. So we're going to get to that in the second hour. Coming up a little bit, we have some free agent NFL news. And there's a lot of news. Some interesting names. A lot of people staying, not going, but we'll get to that in a second. You can follow us along on the Amazon Podcasts. We're also proudly part of the iHeartRadio podcasting lineup, or pretty much wherever you get podcasts, that's where you can find us. We're on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, the Benchwarmerz Podcast, at the BW Pod on Twitter. And I think we can officially announce that we're going to be debuting our newly formed, the Benchwarmerz, benchwarmerz.com, which is also coming out. So,
yeah, the benchwarmerz.com is officially live. We're obviously making some tweaks here and there, like everyone else when they come out with a new website. But we're very excited to be have a little extra have a little something extra in the digital world. Please come and visit us and take a look at some of the blogs that we have up. We're going to be adding more and more content as the weeks go on.
There's going to be some pretty good stuff on there. It might not be a lot, but what's going to be there is going to be good. So that much I can promise you. So that's exciting. And Jose, thank you on air for being the point man on all that, because I am technologically just impaired is a nice way to say it. I could say it other ways off air, but that's the nice way to say it. So
it's a team aspect.
Yes.
It's a team game. And you're in charge of all the editing of our show, so I don't know how technologically impaired you are when you're doing all the editing.
Technologically specific, that's it. My professional radio background has trained me. I spent 10 years in professional radio, so I picked up some things along the way. I don't know if hosting's one of them, but we're working on it. We're getting there. So, all right. So before we get to the NFL draft trade shockwaves that have gone or just run rampant this last week in the NFL, another big announcement. The NFL is just dominating headlines. They officially announced there's going to be a 17-game schedule. And my first thought with this, Jose, was that I'm going to mess up the number of games every time, because 8-8 was forever. There can't be an 8-8 team anymore. And there's so many jokes about 8-8 teams that it's just frustrating. I guess now you have to have a winning record or a losing record. But right off the bat, is this necessary?
That's a great question, because it's definitely not necessary. Will the NFL make more money? Of course they will make more money. They could have games on Tuesday at 3 p.m. and people will watch them. It's a money machine. They can make more money. But I think that at some point they may risk a little oversaturation of the market, but certainly not necessary in my opinion.
Yeah, so Adam Schefter actually broke the story. He said the NFL was expected to expand the regular season schedule this week to 17 games. The league had played a 16-game regular season schedule since 1978, by far the longest stretch without a change in NFL history. And a couple big-name players actually expressed some disdain, I think is the only word that really comes to mind. Alvin Kamara, it has to be edited and censored. He goes, blank dumb as hell. And that's all he said. Torrey Smith had a little bit less of a reaction. He's 17 games is an NFL is great for money, or money emoji, I guess, but they're going to have to adjust practices and what a regular season, off season looks like. Dudes were already falling apart playing 16. As a whole, this is great, but adjustments have to be made. There's a couple other guys. Darius Slay is very upset. And Cameron Jordan, I think above everybody, kind of just lambasted the this, which to me, I have mixed feelings about this because I think you're right. I think that in terms of necessity, it wasn't necessary. But then I look back to when they switched over from 14 to 16 games, and I'm sure plenty of people back then were like, well, why? But us having grown up with this and, having it been this way for 33 years now, or 43 years,
Wow.
it seems strange, but I don't know if it's, I think that the players that are set in their ways, I think the older players are going to hate this because they're financially stable, they're secure, they want longevity and kind of just put it in cruise control. Whereas some of the younger players and the all-star Pro Bowlers, kind of guys who just get in and this is what they can do. This is what they're good at, but they're not good enough to maintain it and stay in the league for very long. I think they're going to be happy because they're getting an extra game check. So I think this helps a lot of players and hurts some others.
I guess I can agree with that characterization somewhat. I think, yeah, if you're an NFL player on your first contract, you're probably happy about this. Not just necessarily an extra game check, which it is, but more so you get an extra game to prove yourself. Whether that used to be the preseason, right? Where they'll eliminate the preseason. Well, that preseason game is the only shot a 7th round pick has to try and make the team, right? If you're Alvin Kamara, you don't need a preseason game, right? You're already on the team. No one's gonna, cut you. So I look at that 17th game now as, especially for teams that aren't competing, as, hey, I'm a third string linebacker, and I've got a chance to make an impression on either on management or on the rest of the league to try and get myself another contract or try and get something to just prove myself. So from that standpoint, yes, I do think though the most important players in the NFL are the players on second and third contracts, not rookie deals. And I don't know. I don't know if there'll be an increase in injury, but it just seems weird that the NFL for the last decade or so has been so focused on reducing the injuries and making the sport safer. I just don't know how adding a game makes the sport safer when, as you said, or whoever said it, players are struggling to make it through the season. I mean, how many players actually play a full 16-game season? I don't know the number off the top of my head, but I can't imagine it's a high percentage of the league that actually start 16 games and finish the year. So I don't see how adding a game in any way makes it safer. Maybe they could argue it doesn't make it less safe, but that would seem counterintuitive.
Well, I think, yes, I think you're right. But I think that the changes that the league has made over the last couple of years have benefited, player safety. And maybe it's, a more safe game drawn out over a longer time ends up being with the same net result. But, a way to mitigate that might be to extend the rosters, allow for bigger rosters. This way, that guy that is missing that preseason game, maybe he doesn't need to play that game. He can play one of the, whatever it comes down to. If it ends up being like one or two preseason games, he can still get a chance. And like you're saying, I mean, we might get to a point where teams have to draft, 2 quarterbacks. It's just I mean, you have to have a good backup now, but it might be if this keeps going. I know 18 games, and who knows after that is in the sights for the future. But
I was just worried. Is the NFL? The NFL knows best, right? They're the king of the NFL. They're the king of sports right now. They have all this money coming in. I would be weary if I was the NFL about, like I said earlier, oversaturation. Yeah, I think baseball kind of had that happen a little bit to it. Just sometimes just too much is not always best.
I would agree with that. I think the one thing that does change that is the betting, the sports book landscape. And what the NFL, what I think they should do is have kind of a Monday night doubleheader. Like, don't change the date. Don't add more days of football, but you can add more times. And there's the one thing I realized actually over the weekend, because I was trying to find some NBA games, and obviously the NCAA tournament was on, so it's the only time in history it's 1 week every year where I go, where's True TV? What channel is True TV on? I don't even know. I know there's a channel.
No one even knows there's a channel.
No, every year I forget, and I'm like, oh yeah, True TV, and then I remember that from last final, whatever tournament. But the NFL, one of the things that makes them so good is that you know exactly when you can watch football. The NBA, I feel like I just before we went on the air, I was like, oh, there's a game on tonight. I had no idea that there was a game on right now. Like, it feels like it's so random, and it's problematic. And so I think if the NFL plays their cards right, which it looks like they're going to, they can really capitalize off this with not only just in stadium audiences and crowds there, if that ever comes back, but also the TV contracts. You're allowing more teams to get primetime games, which is where all the big money revenue comes from anyway. So again, it's just I don't like the sound of, oh yeah, they went 8-9. Like, it's just, I don't know.
Jeff Fisher might come out of retirement. I mean, that was his special by going 8-8. Now he has a chance to actually be an above 500 coach.
Or he'd be 7-10.
He'd find a way.
Yeah, he's just the king of mediocrity. But all right, so Jeff Fisher, former coach of the Rams and Titans. Yeah, he made the Super Bowl with the Titans at least? But
so that was when the Derek Mason came 1 yard short.
Mike Jones
beating the greatest show on turf.
1999. That was one of the first Super Bowls I actually went and watched at like a friend's house, and didn't just watch at home with my family. So I'll never forget that one. But yeah, Jeff Fisher. So speaking of the NFC West, however, we're going to move on to this crazy blockbuster trade. And this hits home for you as a lifelong 49ers fan. The San Francisco 49ers traded the number 12 pick in 2021. They also gave up first and third round picks in 2022, a first round pick in 2023 for the Dolphins' third overall pick in this upcoming draft. And it starts there. And then, so let's just start there, because then there was like a cascade of events that happened after that. But yeah, so right off the bat,
I just want to say two things, right? I had a lot of things, but the first thing I want to say is last week on the show, you were like jumping up and down, or maybe not jumping up and down. That's how I picture it in my mind. You probably were sitting there fine.
I don't do a lot of jumping up and down.
You were saying that the Bears, they were willing to trade 3 first-round picks for Russell Wilson. This is how you move up, and they should move up and make a trade for one of these quarterbacks in the draft. Mm-hmm. The 49ers moved from 12 to 3. The Bears would have to have moved from 20 to 3. Yep. What? I don't even know what that could cost. For the, was that 7 first-round picks? Like, I don't even know how to calculate that. So I just, when we talk about why are the Bears starting Andy Dalton, why are the Patriots starting Cam Newton, it's because they don't want to give up this type of package, and basically push all your chips to the center of the table. I'm all in on this team, on this roster, this player, whomever. I went through a lot of stages on this this trade. My initial was shock, fear, and just a little bit of horror. Like, where I was just, I'm thinking about Mitch Trubisky. I'm thinking about Jared Goff. I'm thinking about RG3. All these guys, all these players, all these teams are players that teams traded significant draft capital for and didn't really pan out. And I'm not quite sure that these teams have really, did they really recover from that? Like, I guess the Rams in a sense have, but it worries me. But then I started thinking about it differently. One, and John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan, I trust. They've done a great job so far. Last year was rough because of injuries, but I've liked the way they've built this roster. I'm very happy with this. Then I hear your voice in my head, Lou's voice, saying the way to win in the NFL is to have a good team and then have a rookie quarterback, on a rookie deal.
Correct. Most
teams aren't really in a position to just say, hey, you know what? Like, we're the Jets. You know what? We're going to just get a rookie quarterback and we're going to win. No, because the rest of your team sucks, right?
True.
Most teams aren't in the position where they have a good team and then they just get a good draft pick and then they can go off and run. The 49ers are actually in the position where they have a good roster for the most part. Mm-hmm. And you add a rookie quarterback, assuming he's good, which I don't know, because it's either probably Justin Fields or Trey Lance.
Jones, Trey Lance.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm not a college football expert. Neither of those guys seem like sure things. So, there is that. But what I thought to myself is, at the end of the day, if this guy is just as good as Jimmy Garoppolo is, it's a win, right? Because we don't have to pay Jimmy Garoppolo.
You're saving $25, $27 million. Yeah.
Maybe you can trade him for a second or a third round pick. I don't know. I don't know what his value is at this point. But and the thing is also, there's no way to get a franchise quarterback in the NFL unless you draft someone. Usually you have to make an early draft pick. You can get lucky with Dak or Russell Westbrook or Brady or Breeze or Rodgers, and Dak is debatable, right? So most of the time you need a top 5 to top 10 pick to kind of get that guy. The 49ers are going for it. They're looking at this roster and saying, this is a good roster. We have a window where we can win. We know we have to sign Nick Bosa. We just signed George Kittle. We have to sign Fred Warner.
Trent Williams got signed. I mean, that Juszczyk got signed.
Yeah, Trent Williams, Juszczyk. They're looking at this roster and saying, let's get a young quarterback in here and see what he can do. And so at this point, I'm liking the moves now.
So at first, when I first heard what they gave up, what the 49ers gave up, it was the 12th pick in this draft, the first and third round picks next year, and then the first round pick the year after. I expected them to go up to either number 1 or number 2. And I mean, I don't know what. I guess Trevor Lawrence is supposed to be the surest thing since Andrew Luck, so who knows what that would have commanded if anything. But it is interesting because all the chatter we hear has been obviously Trevor Lawrence seems to be the sure thing number 1 pick. Zach Wilson is kind of emerging as this. I think Chris Sims said that he thinks Zach Wilson is the best quarterback in the draft. So that seems to be where the Jets would. I mean, theoretically, that's what the Jets would do. And then, but the third pick is interesting because they must have an eye for someone specific. And I've heard Mac Jones' name thrown around. He doesn't strike me as a Kyle Shanahan quarterback because he's not extremely athletic. He's okay, but he's not. A Justin Fields is way more athletic, but I don't know if he's quite the precision passer that Mac Jones is from everything I've seen from various sources. So, but it does feel like it was strategic. And, the Atlanta Falcons are sitting at 4. Presumably they could also take a quarterback, and they don't necessarily need someone to plug and play this next season because they have Matt Ryan still. And I think Matt Ryan would be a good tutor to someone if he was willing to be. Mm-hmm. But it does seem like a lot. It does seem, and the trade-off is, while yes, if they pick the next RG3, they're in trouble. But if they find the next, I don't know, Patrick Mahomes.
Gosh! Well, now you're going for the gold.
But I'm saying, the Chiefs traded up to get Patrick Mahomes in that draft. They still got a steal, but it could happen if they. And the thing is, like you said, Kyle Shanahan, is someone that I would trust way more than like Adam Gase, drafting a rookie quarterback. So it's his track record is far greater than some of the other guys that have had to pick with less pieces around them. And the 49ers also were the most injured team in NFL history last season. So yeah, they are in a very unusual and almost serendipitous spot to really make that jump and that transition from good to great.
And I just want to add to your point really quickly. Sorry to interrupt you, but just you were talking about the Chiefs and the trade up for Mahomes. That's really the trade that I've been looking at. And what I think is interesting about that is that Mahomes didn't start that first year. He was still behind Alex Smith, and then the next year they traded Alex Smith for a second-round pick. And if the 49ers are able to do something like that, I mean, that would be incredible, honestly.
And, I mean, Jimmy G also has some trade value. I mean, at worst, I think that you'd be able to flip him back to the Patriots for that same second-round pick that you stole him for. And I feel like that's a fair
his value seems really low now. I just feel like his value is very low right now.
He's injury prone. Yeah, but I think if you're playing off of Bill Belichick's love for Jimmy Garoppolo, he wanted him, and Brady, went over his head and got Kraft to kind of say, "Hey, let's get this guy out of here." And it was the right decision because Tom Brady went on to win the Super Bowl, but a couple Super Bowls actually. But I think that now, Cam Newton's just a stopgap in New England. I mean, they gave him another contract, but we'll get to that later. But I think that Jimmy G in Belichick's system could flourish. I think. I mean, he wanted him for a reason, and I don't know if Belichick's seems like. I mean, aside from a couple offensive pieces, he's been pretty good drafting wise. I mean, just skill positions, he's not quite that great, but quarterbacks, he's been okay.
Mm-hmm.
But all right, so 10 minutes after the 49ers made this trade, the Dolphins then turned around and traded the number 12 pick, their fourth pick in
the fourth round pick.
Yes. So it was their 12th pick, the fourth round pick, and then their first round pick in 2022 for the Eagles pick this draft, the number 6 pick overall. And
the Eagles' 5th round pick for this year as well.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah,
That's
so
fine.
The Eagles' 6th pick in the first round, and then their 5th round pick. Okay. The Eagles moved back about 6 spots, and they got a 2022 first round pick. So, who does this benefit more, the Dolphins or the Eagles, or is it a push?
I mean, I guess in terms of just moves like picks, I guess the Eagles end up benefiting most because they believe in Hurts, obviously, and they're only moving back to 12, so they can get that wide receiver that you're talking about they need. Maybe Kyle Pitts is there waiting for them, although I don't know if they would draft Kyle Pitts or not. Who knows? But I still think if I had to pick which team I'd rather be in, like whose front office I'd rather be in right now, I think it's the Dolphins because they still have a number 6 pick and they have the number 18 pick in this 2021 draft. And they have 2 second-round picks. And they have the 49ers 2023 first-round pick. So it's just – and it's not like they don't have a 2022 first-round pick as well. So they basically just moved up to 6. Like that's – I guess they moved back from 3 to 6. Knowing that they're not going to draft a quarterback, they essentially moved back from 3 to 6. Didn't have to give up any of their own picks and still have four picks in the first 2 rounds, which means that if they do their job right, they could draft 4 starters.
Yeah, I think it is the Dolphins, and maybe it's just an organizational viewpoint because the Eagles seem like they're in a little bit of a disarray right now, and they do have I like Jalen Hurts. I've said that since last season. Yep. I wanted the Cowboys to pick him, and they didn't. But I'm glad I kind of root for him, not necessarily rooting for the Eagles. But so as it stands right now, the draft order is Jacksonville Jets, San Francisco. This is hilarious. San Francisco 49ers from the Miami Dolphins via the Houston Texans is how it's written. It's pretty good. The Atlanta Falcons are at 4, Bengals are at 5, Dolphins are at 6, and that's from the Eagles. I think there's a chance that the Bengals might reunite Joe Burrow with Jamar Chase and fortify that offensive weaponry. I think that they could use an offensive lineman and take, Penny Sewell from Oregon seems to be a slam dunk home run offensive lineman. But I could, in the draft, everybody likes new shiny things. And I feel like that 3 great receivers and then the Dolphins at 6, I feel like even if Jamar Chase goes, if he does or he doesn't, they have a choice between Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, or Jalen Waddle. So Tua has worked with both of those last 2 guys. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's the Dolphins saying, look, we're going to give you everything we can to make you as successful as possible. Now it's up to you.
I actually think the Dolphins might, now that you've been just talking it out like that, I think the Dolphins might take Kyle Pitts here, actually. I'm just thinking about it just from what I'm not a draft expert. I'm never going to pretend to be, but I've been just doing some reading, and what I've been reading about Kyle Pitts, the comparisons I'm seeing are just basically he's going to walk into the league and be Travis Kelce. Like that's He's going to basically enter that stratosphere like Travis Kelce, George Kittle. Why can't I remember the guy who's on the freaking the Raiders? Why can't I just the tight end on the Raiders?
Darren Waller.
Darren Waller. He's going to be one of those, that in that ilk. Yep. And if you can get a guy like that, especially who's good all around, I don't necessarily know, especially as deep as this class is at wide receiver, you might be better off taking Kyle Pitts at 6 and then taking another wide receiver who's waiting for you at 18.
I don't disagree, but they do have Mike Gesicki as their tight end on Miami, and he had a pretty good season last year. I'm not amazing, but it was 700 yards, 6 touchdowns. He kind of came on stronger at the end, but he looked pretty good. Although with Flores as their coach, he's coming from that Belichickian coaching tree, and when were the Patriots one of their most successful teams was when they had Rob Gronkowski and Aaron Hernandez on the field at the same time. So you could be looking at and honestly, Tua is kind of slight in stature, so maybe if you have one guy who can block better and one guy who can receive, that is a pretty dangerous lineup. Yeah. The Eagles, I don't know about the Eagles. I don't know what they do here. The Eagles. I think the Eagles desperately.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to say they need to take one of those receivers if they're still available at 12.
I mean, you're probably right there. I actually think that you're going to say I'm boring because I always say this, but I actually think the smart thing for them to do would be I don't know where everyone's slotting, but investing in an offensive line. Just last year they were just Carson Wentz was under so much pressure last year, and I didn't see the split between Jalen Hurts and Carson Wentz. I know Jalen Hurts can get out of the pocket and buy himself a little bit more time.
Yep.
But man, I would really like to see them upgrade that offensive line.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad decision. I'm just going on in the historical.
Yeah.
A lot of times people get crazy in the draft room. They bidding wars and who knows, it just becomes a completely different.
That'd be a second-round pick and 2 first-round picks on a wide receiver in the last 3 years. I mean, it's a lot.
I mean, I feel like Jalen Reagor was. I mean, so far he's not lived up to expectations. I think that was a miss.
Well, it's hard to, we talked about this. It's hard to call it a miss right now. The whole. No one on the Eagles offense had a good year last year. Not a single player.
I'm going through Eagles players right now. I guess you're right.
So, their entire organization was a bust last year.
Dallas Goedert, maybe.
What, did he play 6 games last year? I think for half the season.
I know Zach Ertz dropped off the
Jalen Reagor was a little bit injured too. And listen, you're right. First year, Jalen Reagor did not look great, but that it's really hard to judge anyone on that offense right now based on what we saw last year. It was just a complete dumpster fire.
Yeah, never mind about Dallas Goedert either. He had 500 yards receiving. He played 11. I think he played 11 games.
A very forgettable offensive year for the Eagles.
Yeah.
But it still didn't hurt for them to draft another wide receiver. Just give Jalen Hurts a chance to succeed.
Right. I think he will. So the draft order as it stands, like I said, it's Jacksonville, Jets, Niners, Falcons, Bengals, Dolphins, Lions, Panthers, Broncos, Cowboys, Giants, Eagles are the top 12. And then it goes on from there. But it's going to be interesting. I'm very excited for this draft. This is going to be a lot of fun. Some things that are going to impact that draft are a lot of the free agent moves that happened over the course of the last week or two, and we're going to take a break and come back and talk about those. Maybe we can do a little rapid fire because there's a lot of names you'll recognize, and some of them going to new teams, some of them staying exactly where they are. So we'll get to that and more right after this. This is the Benchwarmerz Podcast.
If you're sick with COVID-19 or think you might have it, take steps to help protect other people from getting sick. Stay home except to get medical care. Call the doctor before visiting. Separate yourself from others who live with you. Wear a cloth face covering to protect others. Cover your coughs and sneezes with a tissue and clean your hands right away. Avoid sharing items with other people in your home. This includes things like towels and bedding. Be sure dishes are washed in hot water or the dishwasher before anyone else uses them. Stay aware of how you feel. If you start to have difficulty breathing or if you're worried about your health, call your doctor. For more tips, visit cdc.gov.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers Podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the program, everybody. I am still Lou Ruggieri. That is still Jose Ortiz. And this is still the Benchwarmerz podcast. Hopefully you're following along on the iHeartRadio podcasting app, Amazon Podcast, on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, at the BW Pod on Twitter. There will be a benchwarmers.com in the very, very, very near future. We're live, so come check us out and come see it. It's a lot of fun. We're going to be adding new content as often as possible. Coming up in a little bit, we have our breakfast cereal bracket. It's the Sweet 16, and how sweet it is. If there's a lot of good matchups, we took your votes, we have our votes, and we're going to see who moves on to the Elite 8. ATE, get it? 8? No? Okay. NBA talk, some NBA news, some trades, some deadline stuff, and we'll kind of check in and see where our playoffs right around the corner. But now, Jose, it's still, NFL still dominates the headlines, even in the offseason, and there's been a lot of NFL free agent moves this last week or so, and some of them are, the movement is that they didn't go anywhere else, which still is, still counts. So while I'll run through some of these, I want to just get your opinion and whatever. I'll give you 3 at a time, and we'll see which one strikes you as actually an impactful signing, re-signing, or whatever you want to call it. Tevin Coleman signs with the Jets. Tampa Bay re-signed Ndamukong Suh and Leonard Fournette. And T.Y. Hilton re-signed with the Indianapolis Colts. Which of those 3 strikes you as the biggest impact?
Probably Tampa Bay re-signing Ndamukong Suh and Leonard Fournette. I'm a big fan of team continuity, and I like the fact that they're bringing back a team. They bring back all their starters on offense and defense to a team that just won the Super Bowl. Tevin Coleman to the Jets, kind of like, who cares? Whatever. He could end up being the starter, but that just tells you all you need to know about the Jets, that he has a chance to be the starter. And I don't understand why T.Y. Hilton got that much money for what we've seen from him in the last 2 years. But I got into an argument with someone on Facebook, on Twitter, about that, basically saying that he adds a lot to the locker room that's not going to show up in the stat sheet. It's just, I never really buy that type of stuff on a team that didn't win. So, I guess I got the playoffs.
Well, I agree. Tevin Coleman's he's one of those Kyle Shanahan one-hit wonders. He was great when I don't want to say he was great. He was very good when he was on the Falcons. He got signed by the 49ers and had a couple games where he was the starter and very good, and then sort of just faded away. And now he's on the Jets, and that's where careers go to die, is the New York Jets. So I think, speaking of Joe Flacco Joe Flacco signed with the Eagles he was on the Jets, I think, for a season. But Tampa Bay, I'll give them credit. Bruce Arians, I think, when he said it at the Super Bowl celebration there down in Disney, he's like, "Oh, we're bringing all you guys back." He was pretty banged up at the time. It sounded like he was just kind of drunk talk, but they've done what they said they were going to do. They brought the band back together, and Fournette re-signed, Gronk re-signed, Suh re-signed. They kept Shaq Barrett. They've done well. They franchised Chris Godwin. That team is with a full offseason. It's going to be hard to not think that they're the favorites going into the next season as far as Super Bowl contenders. And T.Y. Hilton he's shown flashes of brilliance. And, I think part of the reason that we have not seen a lot from him, not only, it's been some injuries, but it's also he hasn't had a lot of good quarterbacks in the last few years, if you think about it. He's got a 90-year-old Phillip Rivers. He had Jacoby Brissett, who's a, glorified backup, try to be their starter. And, since Andrew Luck, it's been kind of just duct tape and, whatever. It's just nothing. So
that's fair.
I think opposite with another year for Michael Pittman and Carson Wentz. This is sort of what goes back to what I was talking about earlier in the show about Tua, where it seems like it's the Colts saying, "Hey, we're going to give you all of the pieces we can. You're going to have a great offensive line. You're going to have an awesome receiving core. You're going to have a strong running game. Now it's on you, Carson. So if you can't do it, now we know it's not us, it's you, because we're doing everything we can." And I think part of that is why he got the money he did, because T.Y. Hilton, when he's healthy and effective, he's a great wide receiver.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years since we've seen him at that level, and I just is Carson Wentz a good quarterback or not, right? Because I feel like just later this past year we thought he wasn't good, so I'm not sure that Carson Wentz is I mean, we'll see, but I'm not sure that he's really the massive improvement over Phillip Rivers that we might think he is. So that's just, but like I said, it's not a bad move. It just, I think they could have just drafted someone. If you wanted to keep T.Y. Hilton, why don't you just draft someone for a lot less money? I don't know. Yeah. I don't see him making that kind of impact.
Joe Flacco signed with the Eagles, as previously mentioned. The Chiefs re-signed Marcus Robinson. Sammy Watkins walked and went and signed with the Ravens. And also former Chief Damien Williams was signed to the Bears. Out of those, anything? It feels like to me, and I said this at the time. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I just remembered. At the time, you texted me about Sammy Watkins with the Ravens, and I said I think the Ravens are stuck in 2014 because they signed Dez Bryant, a couple of last season or 2 years ago. And now last season he was there, and now Sammy Watkins. It's like 6 years ago Sammy Watkins was amazing, but what the Ravens need a number one. They don't need a number one who was 6 years ago was a number one. They need a number one now. They don't need a number 5. So that struck me as kind of So I'm gonna just to respond to what you just said. Yes, the Ravens do need number one. Do you know any number ones who are available? Because there's not too many. There's not a lot. We just talked about Kenny Golladay a week ago getting 4 years, $72 million. That's what a number one costs. The Ravens don't have that type of money to spend on a wide receiver, especially. There's really no especially there. They just don't have the type of money to spend on that type of receiver, and so I look at Sammy Watkins as a clear upgrade over Dez Bryant and Miles Boykin, who basically is filling the exact position that he's going to come in. He's going to play the X receiver spot, kind of that possession receiver. And I'm not saying he's going to be some sort of great player or anything like that, but he's got to be better than Dez Bryant and Miles Boykin were last year. And the Ravens can draft a wide receiver if they think it's a position of need, which you and I clearly think it is, but we'll see what they do. But I agree with you to some extent that yes, they needed a number one wide receiver, but that doesn't mean you don't sign anyone because there's no number one wide receiver left. If you look at this market, it was just Kenny Golladay and Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, they could have made a shot at Will Fuller. I think he got $3 million. I mean, that's.
I would say
nothing.
I think he's probably better than Sammy Watkins. But I think Will Fuller kind of plays the same role that Marquise Brown plays, except Marquise Brown, I mean, probably not as good as Will Fuller, but he seems to be a little bit more durable than Will Fuller.
I think Will Fuller's ceiling seems much higher than Sammy Watkins at this point. Sammy Watkins is, assuming he stays healthy, I think his floor might be a little higher than Will Fuller's, but and I think you're right. Will Fuller is a burner, and so, but if you have one burner on a team, you can kind of defensively strategize around that. But if you have two, that's a whole different dynamic. So I don't know. That would have been.
And it's true when you paired that with Lamar Jackson's running ability and then Mark Andrews' ability to kind of dominate the middle of the field, maybe that would have been a nice combination.
Make Dez Bryant a tight end. He's a receiving tight end. That's what he should be at this point. He's not that fast, but he's a big guy, and he can block. I don't know if he can block linebackers the same way he can block cornerbacks, but
they just need someone to fill the Anquan Boldin role. I don't think that Sammy Watkins has that type of body type, but what do I really know? But either way. And as far as the other moves that you mentioned, nothing to see here. Who cares?
Yeah, Damien Williams, I feel like, shot himself in the foot when he opted out of last season. And then Darrell Williams, Le'Veon Bell, and then Clyde Edwards-Helaire kind of all just said, all right, well, we're all going to move up. See ya.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad Damien Williams ended up somewhere because I kind of felt bad for him. But I don't know if going to the Bears is going to be very good for his career, aside from just getting a paycheck. Carlos Dunlap re-signed with the Seahawks. Malcolm Butler signed to the Cardinals. And James Conner, nowhere. Unsigned.
So ranking this in importance, Malcolm Butler to the Cardinals, essentially replacing Patrick Peterson, who's now on the Vikings. Butler's actually coming off of a pretty strong season. He had 4 interceptions, 100 tackles last year, including 86 solo tackles. Pro Football Focus had him ranked as a top 15 defensive back. I actually kind of feel like I'm looking at the Cardinals. They've kind of had like an under the radar good off season. Signing J.J. Watt and then AJ Green and now Malcolm Butler. they haven't had the big splash moves, but I think they've done a decent job of improving their team, and they still have all their draft capital in check. So, yeah, good off season for the
it sounds like the Cardinals are going for it, and this is what we talk. This is what I talk about. They have a quarterback on a rookie deal who is a proven, he's a proven starter. Kyler Murray is a legit good starting quarterback who is going to presumably, barring any sort of catastrophic injury, is going to be better than he was last year. And they're just giving him the pieces, and it's win now. You have 2 more years, 3 more years maybe before he he starts barking about getting a big contract. And so this is it. It's win or go home. And a funny stat I heard over the course of the week was in the entire NFC West, only the Arizona Cardinals have a 2022 first round draft pick.
2021, you mean? Or is it 2022 and 2021?
No, I think it might be both. Yeah, it might be 20. But it just goes to show. I mean, that's not a good. I feel like that's bad if your entire division is in win now mode. I mean, I guess everybody should be always in win now mode, but I mean, realistically, that's not always the case. So that division is still going to be the hardest division of football.
You might see 4 playoff teams come out of there, and it's not impossible now with 3 wild card teams coming out of each division or each conference.
You would just think that they would just cannibalize each other. They have to play each other twice. It's going to be hard unless there's a lot of ties going on.
As far as James Conner,
yeah,
I don't know. At first, I thought it was surprising, and then the more I thought about it, I was like, it's actually not too surprising. If you look at his stats, he's never finished a season. He's never done more than 13 games. I don't believe. He's been a decent running back, but you have to wonder about his durability. I think he's destined to be part of a committee somewhere. He'll get signed somewhere, but it's going to be as a backup or a 1A, 1B type player where he has maybe his first and second down back and someone comes in on third down or something like that. Kind of like Marlon Mack.
Yeah, Marlon Mack, I feel bad for because he tore his Achilles on a contract year, which is just a nightmare. But I don't know. James Conner, he had that kind of breakout year. He was a feel-good story. He's a cancer survivor. He took over for Le'Veon Bell, who everyone said was being a diva and demanding money. And James Conner went in on his rookie deal and played well. It's the first year, and then didn't after that. But I agree. I think he could supplement a team. I think his days as a number 1 starter are probably gone. I don't know. He could maybe as like a Derrick Henry backup. I don't know, something like that, where it's just he can be a relief pitcher.
I wouldn't be surprised to see him somehow get signed by the Dolphins. That might be one team that's still in the mix, but with all that draft capital, they might draft a running back. So
yeah, I mean, maybe a league minimum kind of thing, something like that, or who knows. Or maybe Green Bay will sign him because they just keep signing. They just love having 100 running backs on their depth chart. But all right, so that's it for NFL free agent news for this week. We're gonna take a break and we're gonna come back. We have some stuff to do before we get to our breakfast cereal bracket, the Sweet 16, which I want to do that right now, but we have to wait. It's a tease, as they say in the radio business. But coming up next, we're going to talk around the NBA, some trade deadline news, and we're going to kind of give our opinions on some names, not huge names, but big enough names to notice, and see if the balance of power shifted at all in the NBA. So stick around. We'll come right back. This is the Benchwarmerz Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers Podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.